What's up, everyone? My name is ZayNews, and this is episode 2 of the ZayNews podcast. Episode 1 was very fun. Just got to sit here and chat with you guys for about 20 to 30 minutes. We're going to do the same thing here today, talking about all things NBA, college basketball, hoops related. You name it. If it's talking about basketball, we will address it from my own perspective and my own opinion. If you guys like what we're putting out, if you like the content, make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment. Also, ask questions. I really want you guys to ask questions so I can engage and answer the questions that you guys care about when it comes to basketball in any shape or form. Now, I'm a father of two, so we will be, adding a little bit of a family element here and there, but for the most part, it's going to be sports related. May touch on the Super Bowl here with that coming up in the next week and a half as well. But wanted to get this content out to you guys. Have a lot of stuff going on in the NBA right now, so I wanted to make sure I dropped another video because it's just so interesting with the trade deadline coming up next week, next Thursday on February 6th. So let's touch with my first topic. And to be honest with you guys, this was not going to be my first topic, and I wasn't going to release another video until next Sunday, but it just was kind of a blindside, and that is De'Aaron Fox requesting a trade and also the Sacramento Kings obliging and putting him on the trading block, which I think came out yesterday, which is Tuesday, January 29th, I believe, 28th, which was not expecting. Now, I know there have been some heat between those two parties. When Mike Brown got fired, just with the way the organization was being run, it didn't seem like De'Aaron Fox was the most happy. But it felt like to me, the Kings have done a lot of work over the past 3 or 4 years to put as much talent around him as they could, right? Trading Tyrese Halliburton and getting Domantas Sabonis in replacement of him, going and getting a guy like DeMar DeRozan this summer, right? Like they have pieces, right? They have a very talented team. And more recently, since the firing of Mike Brown, they've actually picked it up and they've been playing pretty good basketball for the most part. So was just something that was surprising to me. But more specifically, I want to get into the trade because it feels like they are really pressing to move him and not make this a prolonged thing that stretches out into the summer and all that sort of stuff. And it sounds like his number one location that he would like to get to right now, who have the pieces to actually go and acquire a guy like De'Aaron Fox, is the San Antonio Spurs, which, to be honest with you guys, off the top of my head, I absolutely love the fit, right? Like that's the piece that San Antonio needs right now. They need a all-star, very high production guard leading that team that can get Victor Wembanyama the ball where he's best at and just operating those two together. You got Vic Man in the defense, covering everybody's mistakes, right? He's really just an eraser, right? And he covers up a lot of mistakes when it comes to defensive miscommunications and people not being able to guard. So him, on the front line on the defensive end, also becoming a very, very efficient and very productive offensive player. You mix that with De'Aaron Fox, a guy who is an elite three-level scorer, a guy who can get his teammates involved. And not only that, over the past couple of years, he's been one of the best closers at the end of games. Trust me, I know I'm a Lakers fan. He has torched us at the end of the games for quite some time, it feels like now. So to be honest with you guys, if they can make that happen, I think the Spurs should go for it, right? They have so much trade value, right? They have like 9 first-round picks. They have a lot of young talent. Even if they made it like a 3-team trade, whatever the case may be, I think if you're the Spurs, you go for it. Because in reality, when is the next opportunity that you're going to have to get a player of his caliber, right? Through free agency? I don't know. Through trades? Like, when do these sorts of trades become available? Trae Young, for the past year, was in a few trade rumors, but now they got so much young talent over there. Do you see him getting moved from Atlanta, right? Like, he's only 25, 26. They're building a good young core over there. It seems like they've kind of turned away from that idea of trading him. So when is the next time a player of De'Aaron Fox's capabilities going to come available, whether it's through trade? Who's young, who may not have even entered their prime yet. I think if you're the Spurs, you have to pull the trigger. And I think you have enough capital to make it work. Now, with that being said, it seems like Sacramento is really trying to move him quickly. So I don't know if you look back to like the past 5 years, there's definitely been times when teams have overpaid for stars, right? Like think of the Rudy Gobert trade off the top of my head. And there's been more than that, right? There most definitely has been more than that. But with that being said, it feels like the market over the past 2 years or so has really leveled itself out, right? It's came a little bit back down to reality. You're seeing trades happen, but not to the same extent for the same, like for one guy, one star player, it's not the same, um, draft capital or role players, whatever the case may be. It's just not the same packages that you were seeing for a while. That just were kind of absurd, right? Like Melo's one of my favorite players of all time. You remember when he got traded from Denver to the Knicks, completely gutted their roster essentially. You know what I'm saying? So it seems like there's more sensibility when it comes to these trades, and teams want to actually hang on to their value as much as they can, which I think the Spurs obviously should want to do because two guys aren't going to win you a championship. But with that being said, I think you want to be aggressive in this scenario. Now, let's say that happens. Let's say De'Aaron Fox is off the books for Sacramento. They get rid of him. Now, to me, that's telling me that they are now shifting focus and becoming completely a rebuild team, which sucks because they've done a lot of work to get the talent that they've required. But now I'm thinking, okay, and this is me approaching it, which I haven't heard anybody talk about, but this is me approaching it from a Lakers fan perspective, right? The Lakers are currently in the market for a center. Now, how realistic do you guys think it is that if they trade De'Aaron Fox, they shift focus and they now want to go completely to a rebuild situation? They have a lot of talented players, high caliber players that they can get a lot of assets for. Are you putting Sabonis up for trade now? And if you are, what kind of compensation are you looking at in return for him? Because to me, now I talked about Miles Turner, I talked about Nikola Vucevic on the Bulls. If you can get Domantas Sabonis as your center alongside AD, a top 5 center in the NBA for the past 3 years, 4 years, what does that do to your roster, right? And realistically, the reason why I think this is so intriguing because what are you really going to get back for a guy like Sabonis, right? Like, don't get me wrong, he is a fantastic player. He's been an all-star. He's a double-double machine. He has a lot of good qualities about him. Like I said, I legitimately think production-wise, he's been a top 5 center the past 3 or 4 years. But with that being said, teams aren't emptying, like they're not breaking out the truckloads, and they're not just giving you all their draft assets and all the sort of stuff for a guy like him. Because the reality is, one thing that he has shown for all his pros is I don't know if he can be the number 2 guy on a championship team. So realistically, maybe he can be your 2 on a play. He can definitely be your 2 on a playoff team. Maybe he can be your. I think realistically, he's like your 3rd best player on a highly contended team in the NBA. And that's exactly the role that he would be on the Lakers. So to me, the Lakers, you throw Rui in there. Maybe you have to put Austin Reeves up for the trade, and I don't know if you want to put Austin Reeves up for a trade. But if you could do something like Rui, oh man, it pains me to say this because he just got off the injury list. But Jared Vanderbilt, because both of those contracts would probably equate up to where about Sabonis is making, plus 2 first-round picks, things start to get interesting. Things start to get very interesting, right? Rui, obviously, I think that would be one way to make the contracts work. So Rui, Jared Vanderbilt, 2 first-round picks. If you're the Sacramento Kings, do you consider that? If right now, this is if they trade De'Aaron Fox, right? I don't want to get my hopes up. I don't want to lead you guys down a path that isn't real. But to me, right, from my perspective, if you trade your best player with the talent that is currently surrounding him, you are pretty much telling that team and telling your fans that we are in rebuild mode now and we are not trying to win, right? Because De'Aaron Fox is in, like I said, not the prime of his career, but he's almost to the prime of his career with an all NBA caliber center, a guy who's historically one of the best scorers ever in the NBA in DeMar DeRozan, right? You have pieces there. Malik Monk, right? Like you have good pieces there. So if you trade him, it's rebuild mode. So if it's rebuild mode, you're not getting 5 first rounders for Sabonis plus 2 role players, right? I don't think that's going to happen. It's just not where the market is at right now. So would you be willing to just cut ties, trade them really quickly, 2 first round picks, 2 elite level role players who have very good trade value in Rui and Jared Vanderbilt? Now again, I don't want to get rid of Jared. I think he is such an important piece to what the Lakers are trying to do. But for Domantas Sabonis, I think it would possibly be worth it. As tough that is for me to say. He's not the greatest defender. He's very productive on offense. He rebounds the hell out of the ball. He's a banger, right? And he would take a lot of pressure off AD to guard some of those bigger guys, and just be a force down there on the board. So to me personally, and he's a playmaker, right? Like he can set guys up, he can pass really well, he can put the ball on the deck, that sort of thing. Man, that gets interesting to me. Now, if you can keep Jared Vanderbilt within that, I think that's wishful thinking on my end. But if you could find a way, put some different pieces, in there. I'm trying to think on our roster who else we can put in there. Maybe to be honest with you, I would do Rui and Connect. Now I don't know if contract wise that would work, but if you could get away with Rui and Connect, because to me personally, as much as I love Connect, I think his ceiling is where Austin Reeves is at right now, and he's only like 3 years younger. So why not just keep Reeves, because he's a surefire, product right now. Like we know what we're getting out of Austin. So if they were willing to take Rui plus Connect, to be honest with you, for as a bonus, I would do it. I would do it, man. I'm just saying, and I think that would legitimately turn the Lakers into a real contender. That's the best center that you can get. I think he would be incorporated very well into our system, what we do. Him playing the center, AD at the 4, LeBron. Maybe you start Dorian Finney-Smith at the 2, because he can guard really well. And then you got Jared Vanderbilt coming off the bench. You got Gabe Vincent defensively coming off the bench. Whew, I like that. I like that a lot. But anyways, guys, let's move on. Let me know what you think. I think legitimately, if they do get De'Aaron Fox off the books, the Sacramento Kings, and they do end up trading him, from my perspective, if the Lakers can't get one of their, I think the Lakers should at least make the phone call and see what happens. But moving on, I wanted to talk about the Milwaukee Bucks today. And I really want to talk about Milwaukee from a perspective of, I really want to talk about Milwaukee from a perspective of, where do you guys see them at this year? Because they've now had a year chemistry-wise for Dame, Giannis to connect with each other, and the chemistry is there, right? Like those two have a good dynamic going. Dame knows how to pick his spots now, play off. Giannis knows when to go, when to take a step back, be the point guard, right? But also do what he does best, which is shoot that 3 ball, get to the rack, put pressure on the defenses in whatever way he can, and really just extend those defenses and make the spacing on the court awesome. But to me personally, they still have underperformed, right? I don't think that's a stretch to say. I think they have a worse record than the Lakers right now. Now obviously they're like a 4 or 5 seed, but they're in the East. You know what I'm saying? So it's a little bit different. But where do we see Milwaukee going this year? If there was one team outside of the Lakers that I would love to see win a championship again, I would love to see Dame get a championship, right? I think that would be a nice tip of the cap to his career and just the work that he's done for an aging guy. I think he's 34 now, who's still productive, right? Averaging like 24, 25 a game. But like realistically, with their roster makeup, I don't know if they can really, like, I think in a playoff series, right? Like if they're the 4 seed, realistically, 4 or 5 seed, they're going to have to match up with probably the Knicks. In one series, maybe the opening series, that's a tough series for them. The Knicks definitely have the bodies and the physicality to match up decently with Giannis. And then you go to the next series, you got a team like either Boston you're matching up against, or Cleveland you're matching up against. Now, Cleveland's interior defense, right, is insane. Jared Allen, the 4-man there, his name just escaped me, but they have a really good defense. They play well together. Their continuity, I was watching them play today against the Heat, right? Like they got their continuity really locked in. Cleveland would be a tough matchup for them as well, right? So in order for them to win there with where they're at right now, they're going to have to beat like all the best teams in the East, and I think that's a lot to ask right now. Ideally, I think it seems like Khris Middleton isn't quite the player that he was. He's kind of regressed a little bit. And it sucks because just last season, when Giannis went down and Dame went down, he won a playoff game for them, right? Like he put the team on his back and went and got one for him. So he can still produce, but it just seems like all the injuries are starting to accumulate and really affect his production overall. And now they're bringing him off the bench. Honestly, I didn't love that move, but I'm just not sure about Milwaukee. I say all this to say, right, like it's really hard to put a finger on Milwaukee. I would love to see Milwaukee contend for another championship. I think they have the talent to do so. Giannis is still very well in the prime of his career, right? And to be honest with you, if there's one matchup that I would love to see, a dream finals matchup, would be Milwaukee versus Denver, right? Like, see the best two players in the NBA right now go at it. I know it's pretty much received by fans and media that the Joker is the best player in the NBA, and he has been for probably the past 3 years at least. But to be honest with you, without injuries, I have never been 100% sold on that, right? And I think a head-to-head matchup would be very telling on who the better player is. You know what I'm saying? That's not to say that Joker isn't the better player, but I would just love to see those two head-to-head for us to get a clear and concise picture on who really is that top dog in the NBA. Because the reality is Giannis has produced at the highest of high levels the past 3 years. Unfortunately, he's just been injured at the wrong times, right? First round of the playoffs, I think 2 of the last 3 seasons. If he's not injured, somebody else is injured, right? And there's just been it's just been tough, right? Nick's dudes getting banged up and just not being able to be on the court consistently has really put a damper on their chances to compete for championships. And I think if they were healthy those 3 years, him specifically, you probably would have seen them in more deep playoff runs for sure. So say all that to say, and as we transition into our next topic about Jimmy Butler, I've tried not to get too deep into the Jimmy Butler saga just because who knows what's going on, right? One day he's playing, one day he's suspended again, then he's taken out of the starting lineup, he's suspended again, and now he's suspended indefinitely. Obviously, you have to trade him. Now, I think the tough part for the Heat is just where do you trade him to? And to be honest with you, I don't know what the trade market is like for Jimmy Butler right now, a guy who's 35. Now, Jimmy Butler is one of my favorite players in terms of what he does on the court, the way he lifts up his teams, the way he shows up in big moments, how productive he has been. Very few players have had playoff runs that he has had, right? Like, I think that's something that we need to put into perspective. Even though they have not won and gotten over the hump in the 2 championships that they made it to, he is legitimately produced at such a high level that not many players have reached to get their teams to the NBA Finals. I'm talking about like historic levels of production. You know what I'm saying? When he's getting triple doubles against the Lakers, averaging 35 points, like 10 and 9, and doing all this ridiculous stuff, right? Like his production during his tenure with Miami and what he has led to get out of that team. Now, obviously, they have great coaching staff. They've had good pieces who have been willing to be led by his style of leadership, right? So it's not just him, but I don't think it's hard to conceptualize how good Jimmy Butler has been, and I know he's aging, but he really has been a great player, and I do think he can help a lot of teams. But just with like the way he handles crisis, the way he tries to get out of situations, the way he's just not consistently on the court, to be honest with you, like I think that's something that he would admit as well, even though he's been through a lot of tough stuff. I think it's a tough sell, right? I don't know, like how does he mesh with Phoenix? I think Phoenix or the Warriors are the top 2 teams trying to pursue him. How does he mesh with a team like the Warriors, or how does he mesh with a team like Phoenix? I honestly don't know. I think he's pretty malleable in certain instances, but also I think it's just there's a lot of unknown around that. And I bring all that up to say there was one interesting one, as it relates to the Heat and Milwaukee. One interesting question that I heard posed on the Club 520, I think it was. They said, like, would it make sense to swap Jimmy Butler and Khris Middleton? And as much as I think Jimmy Butler, currently at 35, versus Khris Middleton, I think, who is also at 34, 35, is the better player. I do think Jimmy is the better player and has been the better player. Giannis seems very much like a chemistry guy, right? And he seems very, very like resistant to change in certain instances when it comes to the guys that he like has been in the fire with, right? Like I really think, even though they got Dame and he loves Dame and they have a great dynamic, that like that Drew Holiday trade probably really hurt him personally. And I also think if you go trade Khris Middleton, that changes the dynamic of that team, right? From a chemistry perspective, that really changed it. And like I don't know how it affects Giannis's mental, so much so that like I don't know if that trade would be worth it to that extent, right? Like, are you going to get the same level of buy-in from Giannis? Are you going to get the now? My answer is I think he's going to be professional. I think he's going to show up, and I think he's going to compete. But at the end of the day, right? Like, will that? And it's not going to be him like quitting on the team or anything like that. Like, I just don't think he's the guy to do that. But will it subconsciously or indirectly have effect on his psyche and make it so that he's just not as productive um, as we're used to seeing him, and maybe just affect him in that way, right? Because there's something to be said for chemistry and enjoying the team that you're playing on, right? The teams that tend to go the farthest are the teams that enjoy basketball and enjoy being around each other and really want to show up and compete, with that core group of locker room guys, right? So to be honest with you, as much as I think Jimmy Butler is the better player than Khris Middleton, if that trade was a possibility, I don't know if it would be worth it. To be honest with you, I don't know if it would be worth it. Um, Now, I think the Bucks, as a management, as a front office, they have to explore different opportunities, just because the chances are, if you don't continue to contend for championships, Giannis may walk when his contract is up. I think after 2026. So I think you have to do your due diligence and see what's out there. But to be honest with you, I don't know if the Jimmy Butler trade is the trade that you necessarily want to go after if you are the Milwaukee Bucks. Phoenix, who knows? I mean, if you're swapping Jimmy Butler for Bradley Beal, I can see it. Honestly, I don't know how much it changes their fortune. I think Phoenix, with where they're at right now, is probably destined for the play-in, and I don't know if that necessarily changes with Jimmy Butler. Now, it may make it so they have a more higher likelihood to get out of the play-in and actually, compete in the playoffs, but I don't know. And the Warriors, to be honest with you, I feel the same way. Like, what are you going to have to get up to get Jimmy? The Warriors have one thing that they do have is they have a good amount of assets right now. They have some young talent right now. Steph is aging, Draymond's aging. Do you really want to give up some of your young talent for a 35-year-old that's not going to necessarily pull you guys out of the play-in tournament? In my opinion, again, it may up your chances, may make you a better ball club. To actually get into the playoffs, but to be honest, you're still probably a first round exit if you're going going up against one of those top two, top three teams, right? In Houston, Memphis, or obviously, if they're AC, definitely they're losing to OKC, right? So just don't see it. Don't think it makes too much sense now. Um, so we'll see what happens. The trade deadline is only a week away, right? February 6th, I think, is when the trade deadline ends. This is an exciting time in the NBA. It always is an exciting time in the NBA. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully some things get shaken up and we see some interesting trades happening, because it's always fun to watch. Last topic I want to touch on, and then I'll leave you guys to it. We're going in about 23 minutes right now. Is just the Cleveland Cavaliers, right? I think these guys deserve a lot of praise for the product that they have put on the court this year. They have been playing basketball at an extremely high level. I was just watching their game earlier versus the Heat, and the continuity that they have, right? The defense that Evan Mobley, Jared Allen play, the way that they are the backbone of that Cavaliers defense and what they're trying to do. How Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland have just really taken steps in their chemistry more than anything. You've clearly seen Donovan Mitchell take a step back, really try to be more of a distributor and try to just allow the offense to get them, looks and create things for them, as opposed to him being having to create everything. So hats off to those guys, right? They're playing really unselfish basketball. I think it deserves to be acknowledged even more. Now, they are getting talked about more than normal, but it's never enough, right? When you see a team playing at this level, it's never enough. You really got to give your hats off to these guys, because they're playing excellent, excellent, excellent basketball. And I don't think anybody saw this coming, right? I don't think anybody forecasted this, right? Playoff team, sure. Competitive, sure. To take the leap from where they were last year to this year, I think you'd be lying if you said that you thought this team was going to be this good. So I want to pose a question to you guys. And I don't necessarily think it's right to ask the question, is this Cleveland Cavaliers team the best Cleveland Cavaliers team ever? Because that wouldn't be genuine, right? But rather than best, let's think of a word for it. Is this the most What am I trying to think of, right? Because I think this is the best continuity I've seen out of a Cleveland Cavaliers team, even better than those LeBron teams, better than those 90s teams that were making decent playoff runs, right? And they still got to perform in the playoffs. So this, I don't want this to just sound like hyperbole and that I'm just, talking out my butt because it's, everything is right now, right? And we're not looking to the past for context and stuff. But I really do think this team, when you talk about a chemistry perspective, when you talk about just the way they play basketball, can go down as one of the most productive and highly achieving teams in Cavaliers history, right? Because with where they're at right now, they're definitely going to win 60 games. They're probably going to win in the neighborhood of 61 to like 64 games. And I think LeBron may have done that once, maybe twice in his Cleveland tenure. The first go round, I think they won 60 games once or twice. But there was never this sort of chemistry. There was never this sort of continuity, right? It was always LeBron runs the show, which he's so great. Why wouldn't he? But I love to see good basketball being played. And this is the best basketball being played from a Cleveland team that I think I've seen, right? Where it's just not relying so heavily on one or two guys, but it's really just orchestrated well by the coaching staff. Kenny Atkinson is probably going to be coach of the year this year. And I just love what I'm seeing. So I can't quite verbalize what I'm trying to say, but this has to go down as one of the best Cleveland teams, for lack of a better word, that we have seen. And I'm really trying to just get a handle on where they rank, right? They're not going to be better than the team that won in, was it 2016, that came back from 3-1, right? Because they won a championship, right? And they probably won like 55 games that year. But is there another team that's better than, outside of them, is there another team that's better than them in Cleveland history? So say all that to say, I love what Cleveland is doing. I think it's an important question to ask. I think it's a fun question to ask because it just makes you put into perspective how good and how productive this team really is being this year. Who knows what's going to happen in the playoffs, right? Who knows if they're going to get past Boston, the Knicks, the East. Those big dogs in the East are not to play with, right? Like those teams are playing really well, and there's a lot of good basketball. So we shall see. But I'll tell you what, Cleveland is a team that is fun to watch. They're playing really high level basketball as a team. Love the depth. I think they're only going to continue to play well. Again, I think they will win over 60 games this year and have the first or second best record in the NBA, either in front of or behind the Oklahoma City Thunder. So hats off to them boys, man. Them boys be hooping. Love to watch it. Love to see it. It'll be interesting to see where they end up at the end of the season, where they fall, whether they make it to the championship, whether they lose in the conference finals, whatever the case may be. I think it's hard to say that they are not one of the best Cleveland teams that we've seen in quite a while. So hope you guys enjoyed the content. If you have any questions, please leave a comment. Ask those questions. I'll make sure to get to them for you guys. This is episode 2 of the This is episode 2 of the ZayNews podcast. We're going to continue doing this. This is a fun way for me to talk to you guys, get my thoughts off my chest, and really just verbalize what I'm thinking and what I'm seeing across the NBA, across college basketball, across sports in general, whatever we're feeling like talking about. I always like to address. So y'all have a good one. Peace out. We'll talk soon.